In this lecture, we're going to be talking about a subject in kind of a different way. A lot of times when you talk about one subject, it's important to talk about one or even many other subjects. For instance, you really can't understand a predator without understanding its prey, or you can't understand a certain prey species without understanding the predators. And indeed, one of the situations I believe that a lot of books on plants tend to, I don't know, I guess you could say fail or don't really explore is that the plants are reacting to what's eating them and not eating them and so on. And what we're going to be talking about today, or starting with, is camouflage, or another way to talk about it is to talk about the proper clothes one should have when they are in the desert. And so let's take a look. As we're looking out here, we can see that we have some different articles of clothing. And as we zoom in, you can see, of course, this particular red shirt, and that it's visible for quite a ways. And it's quite loud. And if we look just over here, and we see this shirt. Now this shirt is not really a camouflage shirt. It is just a regular old light brown t-shirt. And as we can see, sometimes having just the appropriate color for the background is often going to give you a lot of advantage. It's quite the advantage, and one can consider this option. A lot of times wearing camouflage articles of clothing, such as this one, sometimes has social and political issues attached to it that some people aren't really comfortable with, and you can see that they're very effective. But the shirt that is just the same color as the sand does very well. Now we can look over here and we can see that sometimes something that's camo, while it will work, doesn't work as good as one might expect. So merely wearing a camouflage pattern isn't necessarily as good as another, and sometimes the right color is even better yet. And of course, if you just want to be loud, something like a blaze orange or something can have far more effect than what one might actually think. So it's something to think about when you're out in the field, and something that has a lot of repercussions as to what you see, hear, and experience in the desert. And for the next part of this class, we're going to go into the classroom and kind of discuss some of the possibilities and some of the things one can think about when they're thinking on this subject. So let's go on into the classroom and talk about this a little bit. Well, welcome to the classroom part of this lecture on camouflage. And as I was saying, we're going to talk about something that goes hand in hand with this idea of using the proper clothes when we're in the desert. One of the universal mechanisms or concepts that we all deal with in everyday life is something called the feedback loop. And with the feedback loop is something that anybody wanting to understand the desert really needs to understand at a very high level of consciousness. I guess you could say, because you need to be able to understand that it's there and that you can manipulate it and use it. No more powerful or clearer can I make this message than with camouflage. Camouflage, or again, earth tone colors in your choice of clothing will help you learn a lot about the desert. And this is basically how it works. If you have the bright orange shirt and you go into the desert with that, of course you're broadcasting your presence. You're less likely to see any kind of coyote or rabbit or chipmunk or desert bighorn or any of the animals that have a visual awareness of you. They can pick up on that very easily. And that'll leave you without experiencing their presence. So the person using the proper colors, the proper color scheme, and being aware of that, will see more coyotes, will see more rabbits, will see more sheep and deer and so on. And of course, hunters have long known this, and they've used camouflage in all sorts of different ways. In ancient times, they would use it in some rather ingenious and in-depth ways. Sometimes the Native Americans would use themselves camouflaged as wolves, because a wolf can cover a lot more ground and is going to put a lot more fear into, say, a buffalo. And then they would have other members of their tribe sometimes use camel to look like buffaloes, and so they would actually manipulate the behavior of the herd using this form of camouflage. In recent years, a lot of clothing manufacturers, in particular hunters, have started to use high-tech three-dimensional prints. So the art of camouflage is one that's still going on, it's still relevant, but as I said, it does carry for some people certain political and cultural signal that they don't want to deal with. And you can get around a lot of that by using the proper earth tone colors. And then as you walk the desert, of course you'll see more, and by seeing more you'll learn more, which will allow you to see more, which will allow you to learn more and experience more, and those experiences will build on and so forth. Whereas if you're wearing bright colors and you don't see that coyote, you don't, and he takes off, you never realize at what point he saw you or what you did or what you did wrong or right in a given situation, because he's seen you at such a distance that you were never aware of him. Whereas if you're wearing proper colors or camo, you will see that coyote at that instant maybe that he sees you. And you then know, okay, under this situation, this and this and this happened. And now, the next time you go out into the field, you can utilize that. So the feedback loop is a very important concept to understand and to know about and to utilize. And one of the ways we can show that, a lot of people are more familiar with it probably with a sound system, and it works something like this. You have yourself a microphone here, and it has a wire, and it'll go, we'll say this is here our speaker, and a sound comes in to our microphone, and that microphone sends a signal and says, that sound plus 25%. And so the speaker puts out the sound that it's told, puts out that amount of sound plus 25%. Then of course the speaker hears that sound and it says, wow, that's a little bit louder. So it sends that signal, says, now put out this sound, this louder sound, and add to it 25%. And this loop keeps going. And it keeps going back and forth, and the noise level keeps going higher and higher till one or two things happens. Either all the amount of energy or power is used up, the maximum amount of power in the system just sits there, and in the case of this, just a howling squeal that's pretty annoying. Or oftentimes the speaker is damaged, in which case it stops. Now another thing we can do is we can move the speaker further away and aim it in a different direction. And so when the sound reaches the microphone, it's so much less that when the microphone says, give this sound plus 25%, what the microphone hears is only maybe 50%. So it never cycles up. Now, this is a universal, literally universal. You can see it in the universe. A black hole is essentially that. A little piece of matter, maybe a couple of molecules get together and they attract a few more and they attract a few more. And pretty soon they're a pretty good chunk of rock and they just keep going. And at some point, of course, very quickly they're taken in matter, or it would be taken in matter that it could only take in at a distance because it's collected so much more. And at some point it has sucked up all the matter that's available in its range. Well, that's the same kind of a feedback loop. And so the feedback loop happens in all areas of the desert and nature. A north slope would be another effect of a feedback loop. It holds the water a little bit because of the angle of the sun. It's got less radiant energy, which allows some plants to grow. Which these plants grow up and put some shade on the ground, which helps maintain the moisture a little bit. Of course, the roots and the leaves are protecting the soil from eroding, which helps more plants grow. And at some point, the system runs out of water. In this case, it's conserving water very well, but at some point, it's taken all that it can use, and then that's essentially where it levels out at. Another way to consider a feedback loop sometimes doesn't have to have numerous cycles. A way it can work against you is if you have a situation, let's say you drive out into the desert and you break down or you get a flat or something, get stuck, and it's August and it's 115 degrees, and because you were only expecting to be out for an hour or so, you didn't bring any water. Well, now that absence of water has become critical. And that's in a sense a feedback loop. So very quickly, if you're not able to do something with that situation, it's going to be fatal. And you're going to end up dying. And that's kind of like the speaker breaking, one of the elements in that loop. You're stuck out there, you don't have water, it's hot, you don't have a cell phone, it just keeps on going, and it's fatal. But at the same time, you can use it. Of course, you want to use your mind. You want to be able to look at that and say, well, this is something I want to avoid. Well, it's the same way as you're walking across the desert and you're looking at the landscape and you're saying, well, this is going to be a warmer place, this is going to be a cooler place, this might have more water. Pretty soon you're using that concept of the feedback loop almost without really thinking about it. But it's still important, and we don't want to be just a victim of the consequences. That the whole idea of these lectures is that you have this knowledge in a manner that you can actually consciously use it. And the feedback loop and how it deals with camouflage and the proper clothes And again, in this situation, the proper clothes meaning the proper clothes to give you the best intellectual experience in the desert. Not dressing warm or dressing for heat or something like that, or cactus, or there's different ways, there's many different ways we can dress correctly, but in this lecture we're trying to give you the tools to experience more in the desert and to understand camouflage or proper coloration as it pertains to this particular attribute nature, the feedback loop. You'll find important. I think you'll find it gives you a lot of advantages, and I hope you give it a try if you haven't already experienced it and use it. Many people do. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and we'll see you later. Thank you very much.